Gen Zs are obsessed with wealth, but they're not able to understand how to manage it effectively. Why does that happen?
One is that we don't have financial education in school. I mean, a very obvious thing is that. The second thing is we don't discuss money at home. To get anything delivered in 8 minutes, why do I have to wait to become 40 or 50 to get rich? You think that a crypto coin will get you there quickly. I'll tell you something which is very contrarian to a lot of what you hear. In your 20s, all I can tell you is buy the one house that you will live in
Yeah.
and have no other real estate investment.
So, what are the 3 red flags that Gen Z should avoid while investing?
One is, of course,
Welcome to a very special episode of Make Money Matter, India's smartest podcast on finance by HDFC Sky. At Make Money Matter, we bring together some of the most renowned personalities in the world of finance. This isn't just about managing money. This is about making your money work smarter, unlocking its full potential and empowering you to build a future that truly matters. Please welcome Miss Monica Hullen to the show. In this episode, we will be discussing about savings and investments in your 20s. So let's make money matter. Thank you, Monica, for having us here. You have a beautiful house.
thank you so much.
And the topic of today's conversation is something that's very close to my heart as well, which is how do you start investing in your early 20s? So, throughout, if you consume Instagram content, Gen Zs are obsessed with wealth, but they're not able to understand how to manage it effectively. So, what are your thoughts about it? Like, why does that happen?
One is that we don't have financial education in school. I mean, a very obvious thing is that you are prepped all through school and college to start earning, to start doing something.
Right.
But nobody tells you what to do with it once you start earning. So I think that's a major gap
Yeah.
in the way that the education system is. We probably need to start very early on. The second thing is we don't discuss money at home. It's still a taboo. We don't
That's true.
discuss, parents don't like to tell the children if there is economic hardship or if resources are constrained. Sometimes it becomes like an ego thing for
The father,
typically the
especially.
father who
Yeah.
thinks it's a reflection on his ability to provide.
Correct.
So they don't want to discuss the fact that resources are limited and that there are choices to be made. So I think we don't discuss it either in school or at home. So whatever the young people can pick up through now social media or books or whatever, that's what then they're imbibing.
Correct.
And also, I think how probably this generation is different from ours is that the ability to get quick results is far greater today
Yeah.
than it was like 30, 40 years ago. So it's a translation of that thing that if
Yeah.
you get anything delivered in 8 minutes,
Then instant
why do
gratification.
I have to wait to become 40 or 50 to get rich? I
Right.
need to be rich now.
Yeah.
So that I think is a little bit of a disconnect. And so it's a multi-layered problem. So there is this impatience to have this wealth now. You want to get rich quickly, but you also want a work-life balance.
Correct.
Right? So the generations before that, there was only work. Okay, you're a donkey. You just work because not to work, not to have a job meant disaster. Okay,
Yeah.
with this generation, they are lucky enough to have had parents who have built assets. So that much is good, right? So then the desire, of course, is of a work-life balance, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nobody needs to work the way that we did, okay?
Right.
But then now there's a tension that if there is a work-life balance, then the ability to earn so much reduces. So you can ask any person who's done a startup, there is nothing called a work-life balance.
Absolutely.
Right? So anyone with a startup knows that it is long hours, it is stress, it is all of that. But if you want to get rich quickly,
You have to-
while maintaining a work-life balance, it will happen, it will take
Significant
a
amount.
long amount of time before you get there.
Correct.
So if you want to compress it, you'll have to do something which gets you money quickly.
Right. Right.
And that's something typically is not a gamble. Like you think that a crypto coin will get you there quickly, or a F&O trade or a day trade will get you. It's like you're buying a lottery ticket. So if you think you can go to the guy selling a lottery ticket and buying, you're doing the same thing. I mean, there's no real different first principle difference between you playing crypto, playing F&O, playing day trading, And for that chai wala buying a lottery ticket, you are exactly the same. So don't have any
Correct.
misconceptions about that.
Yeah, yeah.
So there is this lottery route to wealth,
Mhm.
which maybe 1 in a million will get. So are you one of them? If you're not that 1 in the million, then where are you? So I think these are the things that this generation needs to think about, that of course money is good, of course wealth is good, but you need to find a way of reaching there. If it is quick, you'll have to compress your work into the next few years. If you don't, then it is going to be far away and you will have to work all those years.
Correct. Absolutely agreed. A lot of us are making very less money when we are starting a career, like
Yes.
40,000 rupees per month. To them, what do you suggest? How do they start their first step towards wealth creation? What should their portfolio look like? How should they allocate their savings?
I'll tell you something which is very contrarian to a lot of what you hear. In your 20s, there is very little elbow room to save.
Correct.
If you're living at home, at least you don't have rent. But should you be paying rent on your own, there's almost nothing left to even eat properly for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
So in your that 20s decade is the decade where you are on starter salaries. There's probably an education loan to pay back.
Correct.
Costs are going to be high. So what I like to tell people in their 20s is, when you get your first job, take 6 months out to please just enjoy your first salary. Can you do that? Just like, don't think about saving that first salary, okay? Just enjoy yourself, buy your parents gifts, buy your whatever, your siblings or whatever you want to do, your girlfriend, friend, whatever. After that, what you need to do is get into a habit of saving, and even like 2,000 rupees, 5,000, depending on whatever it is that you can do. It's just this habit of month on month saving. Don't put that much pressure on yourself in your 20s because there isn't money to save.
Correct. Correct.
So it's a good idea to establish that habit. Like I say in the book, Let's Talk Money, your first thing really is your cash flow system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That you start dividing up your money into savings and spending so that you can see it clearly. So you start with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember that and now I can speak with this experience behind me. I'm on the other side of, like, you all have 30 years ahead of you.
Correct.
You will all get these 2 or 3 multipliers in your, and maybe more, in your income as you go along.
Yes.
And that typically happens around 5 to 6 years after you've done your first job or hopped a few jobs.
Correct.
So your ability to earn more will increase as you gather experience as labor. Like we are actually, as a factor of production, we are labor.
Yeah.
So as we gather expertise, as we gather experience, this factor of production gets more and more valuable.
Yeah.
At some point, it will start throwing off more income, which is then the start. That is the time you really start saving aggressively.
Correct.
Typically, that time will start around your mid 30s. 40s is an important decade where you can really push the savings pedal. And then 50s is that decade where your saving potential is the highest. Your kids are grown up. Your house is bought. Your debts are paid. A lot of families manage to do a lot of their retirement savings in that decade. Not for a moment am I saying you push it to your 50s decade. All I'm saying is that your saving potential is the highest just before you retire.
Correct.
So I would say that in your 20s, be a little mature about not stressing too much about not building wealth right now. You don't have the money.
Right.
Your endeavor should be to gather so much experience and expertise that in the next 5 to 7 years, you're able to command a much higher salary.
Correct. Yeah.
So get into the habit of saving and investing, but don't stress too much about it in your 20s.
So what should that number be when you start saving? Like how much, at what monthly salary should people start putting aside a certain amount of their wealth?
See, monthly, it'll really depend on which city you are in, what sort
Like
of
in a tier
expenses you
one.
have.
Yeah.
So if you are in a organized sector job,
Right.
you are already doing 24% of your basic in your provident fund. So count
Correct.
that, please. You're
Yeah.
already off to a better start than people who are not in an organized sector job. So check whether your company is doing a provident fund deduction.
Yeah.
And how much is it? So the rules say that it's 12% of your basic, and the company matches 12%. So it's part of your CTC, but you're doing 24% of your basic.
Correct. Yeah.
If you're doing that, And in addition, you can do just 5% more of your take home. You're fine in your 20s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So ideally, the savings ratio is 20% of your take home. In your 20s, you cannot do 20% of your take home.
Correct.
So after your PF contribution, if you're still doing about 5, you're doing just fine.
And this 5% should go into a certain asset class, equities mostly.
So the way that I see it is your PF contribution is already going towards debt. Most of it, 95, 98% is towards a debt product.
Correct.
PF.
Yeah.
In terms of asset allocation, it should be pure equity. However, if you suppose you need money in a few years, then
Yeah.
equity is not your asset class. Suppose
Right.
you're building long-term wealth, something which is 7 to 10 years later, or for retirement, which is 30, 35 years later, then of course equity is your friend.
Correct.
But if it is something you're planning maybe to study abroad, maybe to buy a car or whatever, if that goal is closer to today, then you use a debt product.
Understood.
Right, so so your choice of your financial instrument depends on when you want the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the earlier you want the money, the less risk you want,
Correct.
and there is no harm in using a fixed deposit or a debt mutual fund for goals which are closer to today. So
Yeah.
so we need to rethink the way we are approaching products. So we are doing this binary choice between FD, gold, or equity.
Yeah.
It isn't that. It is all of them, because FD is required for something which is required, say, in 2 years. Gold is an inflation hedge for portfolios which are created a little later on, maybe, than in your 20s. And then equity is really for your long term. It's a partner for life, literally, which takes you investments according to the need of the money in the future.
Got it. And a lot of today's generation also invests in FOMO.
Yes.
Right? They see their friends, their peers investing, and somebody is saying like this IPO is good, you should invest in this stock, and it's sort of like a momentum from there.
Yeah.
So what do you suggest? Like, how do you get away from this bias and start putting your thought into what you're investing in?
I would just say, look, Let's Talk Money is a basic primer for anybody starting out. Yogic question, who am I?
Yeah.
Who are you? Are you a speculator?
Or you're
And speculators have a bona fide role in capital markets. They are good people.
Yeah.
Okay? They're extremely important economic agents. But they understand their role and they play the markets accordingly.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Are you that? Or are you investing? An investor is a very different person than a speculator.
Correct.
So if you decide I'm a speculator, then that's what you should be doing. Only speculating.
Yeah.
And if you're an investor, then you should not be speculating at all.
Correct.
So that's how you get out of it. You figure out what is it that you're doing.
Understood.
And is an IPO a short thing? I don't think so.
It's not.
It's one of the high. So everything, any time that there is extremely high return short term available, understand that the risk is equally high.
Yeah.
There is no free lunch. So
Understood.
you will have to take that kind of risk and then get into that. Yeah, and also a lot of people like to brag about their wins.
Yeah.
You know that there's a typical example that people who go fishing talk about what a big fish I caught.
Yeah.
But all the small ones which were caught are not talked
Counted,
about.
talked
So
about,
the average
yeah.
fish is the average return on the market.
Correct. Yeah.
So people will talk up their wins on the stock market. So the question that I actually like to ask is, what is your portfolio return?
Yeah.
And they typically don't want to answer that because either they are doing just portfolio an average index return or lower. So it's very important for you to understand what is the portfolio return that you're doing, that you're getting after all of this effort.
Right. Right.
You know, your FNO trading or whatever. If you're doing just index or lower, aren't you better off in an index fund?
Yes.
Right? So I think you've got to talk to yourself and get to a point where you understand that investing is actually very slow and boring, and it takes a long time for the fruits to come.
Correct.
Speculation is exciting and fun, also very dangerous.
And I'm sure you must have heard about FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early. So, for somebody who's in their 30s and who is starting to plan their retirement, what should be their, checklist? How should they go about it?
It's actually like you will have to either sit down with some Excel sheets what I've done, Let's Talk Money third edition just came out this December, last December 24. What I realized earlier is that people were not being able to do these numbers in Excel sheets. So I've put in worksheets where you can actually calculate what it would cost to live by the time you say you're 50 or 60, and then use a multiplier to see what corpus you would need, and then work back to see how much you need to save every year to get there. Okay, so it's a worksheet based approach where what you do is you inflate your current expenses, annual expenses, by say inflation number of 5 or 6%, depending on what you want to choose. And then you see at 60 what is it that you're spending.
Correct.
And then the way that I have done my numbers is you multiply that number by 26. Okay, there's a whole lot of maths which has gone into it. It's all my D-School eco coming into use. But so multiply that by 26 and you get a very large number with which ends in rupees crore. And then you use a return rate to see what is it that you need to save every year to get there. So depending on literally, like if it's a goal of say 10 crore, okay, for a 30-year-old who wants to retire at 50. Suppose the goal is 10 crore and you're taking a return of around 12%, you would need 14 lakh of savings a year,
Yeah.
okay, to get there.
But that's also very ambitious to say 14 lakhs.
Yeah, except that what these numbers don't do, that's why you need to sit on your own Excel sheets or with the planner, is that you don't start by 14 lakh
Correct.
at
Yeah.
30. You may start with 7
Yeah.
and then you go on so that by the end of it, it's not 14, it's 20 that you're saving. My savings across 20 years have to be 14 lakh a year. Now you increase that 20 to 30, that savings number will drop drastically.
Yeah.
Okay, so the longer time you have, the lesser money you need to save right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyone who's thinking of financial independence, it is going to take a very long time. If you're looking at only your salary, if you are not part of, say, a startup or somebody who's able to really make a lot of money very quickly,
Yeah.
which is maybe again 1 in a million people. But if you're doing a regular job, if you have a gig work, or it is going to take you the next 25 to 30 years to get the corpus ready for your retirement, because remember, your generation is going to live to 100. So when today an average Indian is living to about 72.
Yeah.
So if you're retiring at 60, you've got 40 years left, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You will need the capital. You will need the money to live those years. So when I talk about financial independence, it's a great thing. But don't ever retire from a job. Don't retire from work.
I think
Something
it's
to
more
do.
about doing work on your own terms than
Meaning
following
in
a
life,
schedule.
exactly. So you can get out
Yeah.
of a toxic workplace. You can get out of a corporate race if you don't like it.
Yeah.
But you should have a plan in place as to what is it that you're going to fill your days with.
Correct. Yeah.
There's only so much travel.
Traveling and strumming
How
guitars.
much?
Yeah.
A holiday is
Absolutely.
meaningful
Yeah.
when there is work in the middle.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And on that thread, I want to ask you, what about other assets? Like, should you buy an insurance in your 30s? And
Insurance is not an asset.
like, it's an investing
No.
instrument? No.
Not at all.
No.
Insurance is protection. It's a seat belt, it's a life jacket. You buy medical insurance so that in case there's a health incident, you don't dip into your savings and you have
To
an
cover
insurance policy to pay for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in case you have an untimely death, the family should get a very large lump sum so that they can have their financial goals met till they're financially stable. So insurance plus investment, the policies that they sell, the traditional money back, whole life, ULIPs, my one sentence advice is just don't do it. It doesn't work for you as a policyholder. It works for the insurance company. It works for the agent. It works for the bank selling. It works for the owners of the stock of the insurance companies. But you as a policyholder don't get either adequate insurance or return. So detach this thought that insurance is investment. It is not.
Yeah.
It is protection. You're using it for protection. So the day that you get financially free, you don't need life insurance because you've got your assets in place.
Correct.
If something were to happen to you, the assets belong to the family. So the only way to think about investment is that savings become investments through the route of debt, equity, and real assets. You have to have that thing. This equation has to be really clear in your head. Because if you start with the products, there are 1,000 products out there. You turn savings to investments through debt, which is fixed deposits, PF, PPF, debt funds, through the route of equity, which is direct stocks, mutual funds. I don't consider ULIPs to leave them out. And then real assets like gold and real estate.
Got
And
it.
so
Yeah.
your decision making is really making a thali meal of these different products, which suit your short, medium, and long term goals.
Right.
That's how you think of investments. Basic asset classes are these. Insurance is not an asset class.
It's just a protection.
Yes.
Got it. And you talked about real assets like gold and real estate. And I've heard a lot that, these are not good assets to invest in. You should rather go towards equities or debt in case you want to be conservative. But real estate, because of illiquidity.
Yes.
So, what are your
Right.
thoughts about that?
So gold, because of the importance in the Indian household of gold, and again traditionally, you see, for women in India, gold has been the only asset that
That
she
they
could
own.
own. 1% of the Indian women who are able to get their assets, or for most of the women, they don't have ownership of real assets.
Right.
They don't get ownership in the father's house. They don't get ownership in the in-laws' house. So
Correct.
they are without physical assets like real estate. They don't have the ability to onboard things like mutual funds. For them, gold becomes their only asset. If you're not in a position, like, let's not look at it through the lens of this urban educated St. Stephen's SRCC woman who's got everything sorted.
Yeah.
Look at it from the point of view of garment tailor. She's running a tailor shop in a small town in UP, married in a family who's allowing her to work.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a million different stories of women out there. So from her point of view, if she's doing gold, at least it's fine. Of course, if she onboards modern products, it's better. So that's the place of gold. And even in a modern portfolio in India, because of the importance of gold during marriages,
Yeah.
maybe 5 to 10% is not a bad idea through a gold ETF. Ideally through a gold ETF. Government bonds are no longer there, but gold ETF. Real estate is such a problematic asset in India.
Right.
I can only, every conversation I have with people about real estate, and by my age, people have gathered a lot of real estate. There are only horror stories that I have. All I can tell you is buy the one house that you will live in
Yeah.
and have no other real estate investment.
And that's not really an investment because you're living in it.
So I don't count
Yeah.
my house where I live as part of my net worth.
Yeah.
Because what is an investment if something is giving you income or profit?
Correct.
As an investment, it's a very poor investment because it has to compete against other assets. So the way that you deal with real estate is to say, what is my annual yield on this property?
Yeah.
Which means net
Rental.
annual rent, divide that by the value of the property. The results are shocking.
That'll be really low.
1.5%, 3% if you're lucky. PPF is giving me 7.1 tax free right now. Okay,
Yeah.
my long term return on the Sensex is 12 to 14%, depends on when you do the numbers. So it has to compete against other assets in the market. Then there's a problem of course, liquidity. And then the problem of selling and buying, which requires, unfortunately in India, cash. Very few properties sell only check payment.
Yeah.
Okay. One is that how do professionals generate that cash? And were you to sell and get 30 to 40% of the value of the house in cash, what are you going to do with it other than buy another piece of real estate? Smaller towns have a problem of people taking over your property, kabza.
Yeah.
Okay, these are all real things. The land mafia and the kabza are
Actual problem.
actual things in India. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, this Western concept of I will leverage my income. I hear this all the time. I will leverage my income. I said, you've just read the wrong books. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
This
that
is
doesn't
India.
work in
भारत
India.
में ऐसा नहीं होता है.
Yeah.
My rent is a fraction of my EMI.
Hmm.
My rent and my EMI are not the same number. It's a fraction.
Yeah.
And that noise is the amount of black money in the system. That's how we put it.
Yeah.
So it's a terrible asset to own. And then at a certain stage, your kids will fight over it. Okay? That problem I thought would get over, but it doesn't get over. From all the understandings that I have, is that real estate remains very badly fought over asset in terms of inheritance battles as well in average families.
Correct.
So financial assets are far easier to bequeath.
Hmm.
For real estate, one, the paperwork is horrendous.
Yeah.
Money should not take up too much of your time. It should work in the background.
Yeah.
Real estate takes up too much of my time.
Yes. You have to think about manage your property.
Yeah, so imagine if you had 5 rented properties. Tap is leaking, roof is leaking, neighbor is hurting. Like, these are decisions you take. What do you want in your life?
Yeah.
That is fun to you. If dealing with these kind of things is fun, like, yeah, sure, please do it.
Yeah.
But I think that's where people have to understand that each choice will have consequences.
Fair.
And return is not your only metric for an asset.
It should be mental.
It should
stress.
be one of the things.
Yeah.
It is ease of transaction, it is cost of transaction, it is the mental peace that you might get with the asset that you have. So it's all of those things. Return is one factor.
Correct. Understood. And SEBI also launched this new asset class called an SIF.
It's not an asset class, it's a product category. There are only 3. There's debt, which is an asset class. There's equity, which is an asset class. There are real assets. These are asset classes.
This is a
SEBI
category.
has introduced a new product category, a new kind of mutual funds fund, which allows people to take structured approach, I think it's called a strategic approach to their portfolio.
Got it. And what does it entail? Like,
It just entails a little bit of higher risk. So what happens right now is that you have mutual funds. There are 37 categories of mutual funds.
okay.
SEBI allows every fund house to have one scheme in each category.
All right.
Okay, so suppose there is a large cap category, right? XYZ fund is allowed to have one scheme in large cap.
Okay.
So let's say the large cap is defined as the top 100 stocks in the market. Do you agree that the top 30 stocks and the bottom 30 stocks will have very different sets of attributes?
Correct.
The top 10 in the 100, top 30 in the 100, and the bottom 30. These bottom 30 will behave more like mid caps
Okay.
because they are just above the mid cap threshold. The top 30 are those very large, mature, blue chip legacy companies that you see.
Correct.
They are almost from different universes.
Yeah. In terms of
Now-
risk return profile.
Absolutely. Right? So imagine that as a fund house, I have chosen these 30, but I also have a view on these 30. I'm unable to launch a second large cap fund because I have already done one.
Yeah.
But I think my investors would like to invest in the bottom 30 of the large cap. This new product category will allow such styles, such fund manager strategies to work. That's essentially it.
Correct.
Okay, so it gives a little bit more elbow room to the industry to showcase what the fund manager can do in terms of his or her ability to generate more return than the benchmark.
Got it. Understood.
That's all that it means. And to prevent average retail investors from doing it, the
Their
threshold
threshold
has
is
been
higher.
set.
Yeah. So it's
That's
meant
all.
for more sophisticated investors.
It's meant for people who understand that targeting a higher return will entail a little bit more risk. That's all.
Understood.
Yeah.
Got it. So what are the 3 red flags that Gen Z should avoid while investing?
One is, of course, fear
Yeah.
of whatever you said, FOMO. Second is greed. Third is impatience. Okay, just the fact that they're too impatient that they want results now.
Yeah.
Investing is a long-term business.
Yes,
Just
absolutely.
these 3. Yeah.
Got it. Whenever we're picking up a mutual fund, what are the things that you should avoid actively? Not look at these ratios. And I know a lot of people spend too many time reading ratios and trying to understand, what is giving a good return, what's not. So What are your thoughts?
I think basically if you're looking at just the last 1 or 2 years of return for the equity fund, it's a little dangerous. I think to see pedigree, you have to see 5 to 10 years of consistent return.
Correct.
If you're picking last year's winner, so people look at league tables and say that this fund outperformed all others by a magnitude of XYZ percent, which is why I will pick this. But that fund was last year's winner. Chances are it'll be at the bottom of the table next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're picking just last year's winner, there's a problem. The other way to do it is to look at the top quartile. Who are which are the funds in the top 25%?
Yeah.
Is your child the topper, or is the child consistently in the top 25% across the 12 years of school? Everybody would want the topper, but the topper can go up and down. Like, is my fund in the top 25% consistently over time?
Yeah.
I think that's the metric. That's how you will choose a fund. Of course, you can look at ratios. You can do detailed looks at Sharpe ratio, trainer ratio, all that. It gets very technical for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, like I said in the book, Let's Talk Mutual Funds, there's a whole process out to tell you how to choose funds. I don't give you prescriptive names of funds. I stop short because this keeps changing. But it is a pathway to developing your own portfolio. And the mistakes will come along with that you just don't pick last year's winners.
Thank you so much, Monica, for being with us here on the show. And thank you so much for giving us all this insight. And if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to HDFC Sky.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.